This meeting is for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Jimmy A will be sharing on ideas, emotions, and attitudes for 50 minutes. Jimmy, we are delighted to have you with us today. Thank you for your service and your willingness to share your life with us. We love and appreciate you. At this time, please help me give a warm welcome to Jimmy from Neptune, New Jersey. His home group is the Design for Living group. Over to you, Jimmy.
All right, Andy. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Jimmy. I am an alcoholic. And it's customary where I come from is to let you know that I have a home group. It's called Design for Living Group, which is in Neptune, New Jersey, on the Jersey Shore. I have a sponsor. I have a service sponsor a bunch of guys. And most importantly, I've been sober since my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was on March 28, 1987. So extremely grateful for this way of life and for Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank you, Tamara, for the invite. And congratulations to Mel and all the other celebrants. Even that guy from Los Angeles, that guy over there, I could see him right here with 36 years, Ralph, my good buddy Ralph. So congratulations to all. And I'm really under the weather. If this was an in-person thing, you'd have a different speaker. You might have Ralph today if this was in person, because I am pretty sick. I don't have COVID, thank God, but I am under the weather today. But I'm really grateful to be here and to share what I'm going to be sharing today, which is, I'm not sure yet. We'll get to that when I get there. But, a lot can happen to you. 35 years of sobriety, any old timer will tell you that. I mean, I've had some incredible experiences throughout my sobriety, spiritual awakening, spiritual experiences, psychic changes, personality change, whatever you want to call it. And, and that has been a result of just being with sponsors, being with sponsees, going on retreats, going to conferences. I have the honor and privilege of serving my area, Northern New Jersey, as the area delegate to the General Service Conference with 74 days to go. But 2 years of incredible life-changing experiences. So a lot has happened to me through the last bunch of years. But what I'm going to talk about today is the thing that was probably the most powerful thing that happened to me in all that time. The thing that really unlocked the door for me to enter into this fourth dimension, or the spiritual realm within myself, to really understand what I'm all about. Because for a long period of time, I didn't understand. I come to AA like many of us, or all of us probably, broken, sick, ripped up, torn up, you name it. Homelessness, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I picked up my first drink at 13, landed in AA at 29. My buddy Ralph says one of the greatest lines which I stole from him is, walking into grace doesn't feel like walking into grace. Going to my first meeting, I got 12 stepped by a complete stranger in Newark Airport, of all places. A guy sat next to me and asked me what was wrong with me. And I told him, and he said, I have the answer for you. And that night, a car full of strangers picked me up, and they said the magic word, get in the car. And I got in the car with these guys, and, they walked me into my first meeting. I've been here ever since. But, I don't want you to assume, and you probably don't, but if you knew, you might, I didn't get on a spiritual rocket ship that just went up and away. That's not my story. My story is I've grown, I've hit a wall, I've grown, I've hit a wall, I've grown, I've hit a wall. I got things back real fast in AA, externally, got back with the wife, had the AA kids, got the house, the car, the fence, all that stuff we talk about, money in the pocket. And to the untrained eye, it looks like normal living is the solution to alcoholism. But at 5 years without a drink, I'm ready to jump off a bridge, because I'm under that delusion that a lot of us fall under coming in early. I think abstinence is a solution to a spiritual problem. And, I'm just not drinking, active member of a group. But I'm not looking at all those things I walked into AA with, all that fear, all that insecurity, all that secrets. I had a lot of secrets. I come from a family that my father was a pretty violent guy. And, I learned to internalize all those feelings because, I grew up in a family where what goes on in the house stays in the house, and you don't talk about these things. So I'm flawed. I have a flawed character walking into AA, living on the streets for 18 months prior to coming to AA. There's a lot of things that happen to you on the streets, and as we say all the time, one night on the streets is one night too many. But, I'm just like many of us, I'm just shattered. And those first 5 years, things look good externally, but I'm dying on the inside, and And I go through the steps for the first time at 5 years sobriety when a man calls me out at a meeting and I asked him for help and he took me through the steps. I got well pretty quick, and then what started to happen is one of the great lines we hear all the time, don't let the life that AA gave you take you away from your AA life. And little by little, I started to pull away from AA. Not that I didn't attend AA. It's just that I stopped doing my primary purpose. And all of a sudden, a lot of other things became more important. And at 10 years of sobriety, I kind of blew up again. I hit that wall again. And, I didn't drink, but what I did was probably worse in my mind is I walked out on a family and I walked into the arms of a woman who understands, and I'm that guy that the book talks about. I build a beautiful spiritual structure up for me and my family, and I tear it down with a senseless series of sprees. And you don't need to be drinking to blow your life up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned that. Just sponsor a bunch of people. You'll find that out. But at 13 years, I walked into a bar because I'm living that double life that we talk about in the fifth step. I'm dishonest. I'm giving my sponsor about 20% of what's really going on. And my life is just falling apart. But my ego, my pride wouldn't allow me to put my hand up and say I'm in pain. I put the good AA game face on. Everything's okay. But I'm dying again. 13 years without a drink, active in AA. And I walk into a bar and I order a drink. And I'm staring it down. And now I understand what Dr. Bob is talking about, being stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to take that drink, but God, the pain is so great. I need to take that drink. And as I'm staring down that drink, I got the devil and the angel on my shoulders. Drink it, don't drink it, drink it, don't drink it. All of a sudden, a hand goes around that glass and pulls it back. And when I look up, the bartender just happened to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he said to me, "What are you doing?" Apparently throwing my life away. And really, I just hit rock bottom at 13 years of sobriety, under a lot of delusions that I think if I just don't drink, everything is supposed to be okay. My life is just falling apart in every area, in every aspect. And what happened to me is I walked into a meeting one day, and this guy, Peter, who has been on this meeting numerous times, was given a workshop. And the human ego is unbelievable because 2 weeks earlier, I want to jump off a bridge and kill myself and drink. And 2 weeks later, I'm in this meeting and I'm judging this guy like this guy's too good to be true, But I go up to this guy and I start to ask him for some help, and he becomes my sponsor. And he becomes my sponsor for the next 17 years of my sobriety. And he starts to take me through the steps. And again, I'm going through the steps. I write inventory. I share the inventory, and we get down to the same stuff, the resentments, the fear, the self-centeredness, self-seeking, the dishonesty that's going on, but something is stuck. I'm still stuck in some areas, and I don't know what to do. How many times have we asked the newcomer when they come to us, are you willing to go to any length, right? Are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? And a lot of times, they like their head like a bobblehead doll. They, yep. But do we ever really explain what any length really looks like to them? Do we take the time out to explain what that means, right? Well, I was too afraid to ask when I was asked that question. I don't know what any length looks like. I'll just make believe I think I know what it looks like, but I'm not going to ask because I'm afraid to ask questions when I'm new. But here I am. I'm sober a long period of time, and I don't even know how to address that question anymore. Well, I've done the same thing numerous times. The book numerous times, 12 to 15 times, maybe even more, ask us to set aside or lay aside our prejudice, our old ideas towards something, right? And how many times have I not even looked at or examined what an old idea is? Bill writes in How It Works, a paragraph that was geared to Dr. Bob, because Dr. Bob had a little reluctance with doing some amends or restitution, as the Oxford group used to call it. In that chapter, it says, at some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result is nil until we let go, absolutely. Why can't I let go? Why am I resisting change? Why am I sober a long period of time at that time, 13 years, and still stuck in Alcoholics Anonymous? What's going on within me that I can't understand or share with or talk about, right? And what I come to find out is the thing that is always showing up when I'm in that place is my pride. And pride is the essence of my self-centeredness. And pride is the thing that justifies all my character defects. And when you're in spiritual stagnation, like I was at 13 years without a drink, pride runs the show. So here I am, 13 years sober, spiritual stagnation, way off the beam in Alcoholics Anonymous, living a double life in Alcoholics Anonymous, facing a ton of frustrations, conflicts, disturbances, you name it. I am really in a lot of trouble at 13 years without a drink. And I'm sitting with this new sponsor, and he's starting to have me do certain things. And like I said, I went through inventory. But the line that continuously kept on going through my head at that period of time is that some of us have tried to hold on to our new, old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go. Absolutely. I've been reading that line. I've heard it in a million meetings. You guys read it every time you read How It Works, for years. And I've been reading all those other references to setting aside or laying aside our old ideas. But to be honest with you, I never even investigated what my old ideas were. So no wonder why I can't let go and let God. So the question I had to really ask Peter was this, how in the world can I let go and practice this genuine humility that you're talking about when I'm so filled with this spiritual pride? We got a story in There Is Solution. Many of you are familiar with it. We just read it in my home group the other day. Story about Roland Hazard. And, just to paraphrase the story, this guy's an American businessman. We all know that, right? Certain American businessman. Roland Hazard, for years, floundered from one sanitarium to another. On page 26, it talks about that. And he goes to see Carl Jung in Europe. And he has a drinking problem. And his family was well off. And they were able to send him, or he was able to go to Europe and go under the care of Jung. And Jung starts to work with him. Starts to get down to the triggers in his mind, starts to use psychology with him, right? But Roland Hazard leaves, and all of a sudden he goes back and he stops in Europe or France, and he picks up a drink and he gets loaded, and he turns around and he goes back to Jung, and he asks the doctor, or he begs the doctor to tell him the truth, right? But why I bring that story up is because there's a little paragraph that's in here, and I didn't see it for years. It's funny how paragraphs or sentences or lines show up in a big book, but you don't see them. But in that story, it says, but this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. What is that certain simple attitude? That's what I needed to find out. On page 55, it talks about that. What he had to do was he had to lay aside his old ideas towards what? Well, let's start with everything, just like I needed to do. He needed to search honestly within himself, just like I've never done. And more importantly, he had to start doing inventory and be honest with himself. And if he did those things, as it says in that book, he would have an extraordinary experience, which he found God. So at that time, the question I needed to ask myself was, have I done any of that stuff in the 13 years? Have I really let go of old ideas or let go of anything, really? No, I haven't. Have I really been honest with myself? Not really. And if I'm not honest with myself, I'm not going to be honest with you, right? And have I done any kind of inventory? Yeah, I've written inventory. I've done some half-ass inventories too, right? But the true answer was no. We have a question that goes around Alcoholics Anonymous a lot of times, and the question is really simple. If AA works, why do I have so many problems? Well, because I'm not doing some of these things that I'm talking about right now. And so Peter gave me a few questions. He said, Jim, what are you holding on to that you don't understand? What lies do you continue to tell yourself? I started to understand what the old timers used to say when I first came in, when they said that alcoholism is a soul sickness caused by a separation from God and a disconnect. Is this the soul sickness they're really talking about? The feelings I have, these things I don't know how to express, these things I don't know how to tap into? I've heard it many times from many old timers. Alcoholism doesn't come in a bottle. It comes in my mind. Is my mind that delusional that I can't see truth about a lot of things? And more importantly, how agnostic really am I? Because what I started to really find out about myself is, here, God, here's the drink problem, but I'm going to handle the rest of my life. And I didn't understand how much trouble I was really in. So Peter gave me this exercise. It's an exercise that doesn't come out of the book. I think he went to sponsorship school for this, but again, it's not conference approved. But it was the thing that immediately unlocked the door for me. And the first thing he had me do is something that I had contempt of immediately. He said to look up the definitions of idea, emotion, and attitude. What does that really mean to you, Jim? An idea, a concept developed by the mind, a conception of what is desirable or ought to be. My life should look like a certain way at 13 years of sobriety. My life should look at a certain way at 35 years of sobriety. An attitude, a feeling or position with regard to a person or thing, especially of the mind. What do I take towards that attitude when my life doesn't look the way it is? What's the conflict that starts to happen in a guy like me? What's the thing that blocks me from me and you and me and God? What's the wedge that gets in there every time with my attitude? Because my life is not looking the way I think it looks. And then an emotion, an affective state of consciousness by which joy, sorrow, fear, hate, or like is experienced from different states of consciousness. So what I really started to see is my mind creates all my problems. And again, if alcoholism is not in a bottle, where is it? It's right here. So what I started to do is, so I started to, look at this stuff for the first time in my life. He asked me to look at 5 areas of my life. He asked me to look at my physical being, my health, my diet, my exercise. He asked me to look at my work life, my occupation. He asked me to look at my financial life and money. He asked me to look at my home life, my relationships. And finally, he asked me to look at my AA life and my spiritual journey. When I started to look at this stuff and I started to ask myself, what is the idea that drives it? My life should look like this when it comes to money. My life should look like this when it comes to my relationships. My life should look like this when it comes to all these areas that he's asking me to look at. And what I started to look down, as I started to write this down, I thought, man, this is some stupid stuff, But they're the driving forces that are in my life. They're in all our lives. Bill talks about things being root and branch, under the surface. I've been acting and thinking a certain way for such a long period of time. I think everything I think is the truth. And what I needed to do was start to pull those roots out and to start looking at this stuff on a basis and a level that I've never looked at before. And then when I started to look at these things, I was asked the question, I needed to write a solution. I needed to challenge my belief systems and write it and create a vision of what my future is going to look like when it comes to this stuff. In We Agnostics, it says either God is or he isn't. What's your choice to be? Now, the ego likes to answer that question all the time. And if the ego's answering that question, then why do I have so many problems? If God is everything, why do I still have fear? If God is everything, why do I still pray to misery and depression? If God is everything, why am I still unhappy at times? If God is everything, why am I not of real help to other people? And so I started to look at these areas of my life. And I wrote them down. And, he wanted me to start each sentence with the belief. What's the idea behind everything? I looked at my physical being, my health, my diet, my exercise, all that stuff. 1999, I'm in a pretty horrific accident. On December 6, 1999, I got retired at the age of 40. I've had 41 operations since that time, up to this day. I've had 12 back operations. I've had 3 knee replacements. I have numerous other knee surgeries. I've had neck surgery. I've had cancer twice. I've had bypass surgery. Again, what's the old idea behind that? Real men are strong. Well, I'm falling apart. I don't drink, I don't drug, and I'm falling apart. What's wrong with me? Real men are, real men are in good shape. Real men are strong. I mean, these are all old belief systems that I walk around with. Where they come from? They come from my father. They come from my mother. They come from my grandparents. They come from elders. They come from teachers. I take it and I put it in my mind. I think it's reality. Well, what the truth is I'm breaking down, and I'm always in a doctor's office. It seems like at this point in my life. what's wrong with me. And this is what's creating the attitude or the emotion. This is what's creating the attitude. So I'm always pissed off. I'm always angry. I'm always feeling some certainty. I'm always disconnected from God and from you because I'm so consumed with me. And that's just one area of my life. What about my financial life? You know, real men don't carry debt. Well, at the time, I'm 50 years old. I got debt out the door. I owe everyone money. And where do I get that idea from? Well, I have a father that's a saver. I had a father that always told me to put your money away, always save for a rainy day. My dad was a butcher. He probably topped off at 40 grand a year at best. And he put five children through major universities in the United States. How the hell did he do that? I'm 50 years old. I'm broke. I have no money. Real men are financially okay by the age of 50. Real men don't depend on others financially. I'm in this relationship with this woman whose husband just died. She just collected on a huge insurance policy. So not only am I using her for sex, not only am I using her for emotional security, now I'm using her for financial security. So these things, which I don't think are really important or even really important to talk about, these are the things that are blocking me from God and they're blocking me from you. My home life. Real men are faithful. I broke that law a long time ago. Where do I get that from? My old man. My dad stood in a marriage for as long as until he died. But I don't. I throw away every moral. I throw away every value. I throw away everything good of goodness that my parents tried to give me. I always like to say, you guys have heard me say this before, you know, I was born perfect and I was quickly handed over to these two character defects called mom and dad. And I introduced my parents, like we all do, to a way of life that they didn't even knew existed. And I take everything of goodness and I just roll it into a ball and I stuff it right down my parents' throat. The shame, the guilt, the remorse that we walk around with. Most alcoholics are shame-based identities. And here I am in Alcoholics Anonymous, filled with shame, walking out of a marriage, shame of failing out of school, shame of not being able to hold on. There's so many things that are going on inside of me that I'm not addressing or I'm not looking at because I don't even know how to look at that stuff. But what this exercise started me to look at is the truth of Jimmy. AA spiritual life. You know, I think everyone in AA should be unified. Then how come we have so much disunity today? I'm a big believer the way you speak at the podium is the way you should be acting off the podium. And I see the difference in people all the time. And I become judgmental. I become a character assassinator. I become that guy that's just a pain in the neck. And again, I'm just looking at some of these things and, and I'm writing them down. And the question I had to ask myself, well, there's really two questions I needed to ask myself when I was done with this exercise was, trying to find it. I'm looking at the sheet that I have and I'm trying to find out the questions. Oh, am I willing to live on terms other than my own? And more importantly, where is God in all of this stuff? So that's what started to happen as I started to look at this stuff. And what I started to experience about myself was a deep sense of disconnectedness to you and to Alcoholics Anonymous and to God. And the separation that was on a deeper level than I even was aware of. And what I really started to understand is that I played God in every aspect of my life at a depth that really started to disturb me. This idea that these things are the things that are controlling me, these ideas, these emotions, these attitudes, the things that are blocking me from God, the things that are blocking me from you, because I think my life should look a certain way. This is the stuff that was all in my head, all in conflict. And what I became painfully aware was that, that like steps 10 and 11, I'm not even doing those things. I'm not putting the spiritual mirror up to myself on a daily basis. I'm not taking spot check inventory. I'm not looking where I'm showing up resentful or dishonest or self-seeking or inconsiderate or afraid. I'm just blaming everyone for everything that's going on in my life. And what started to happen as I started to write this stuff down, I started to see some truth about me. In the 6th step, it talks about being entirely ready. The 12 and 12 talks about how many of us really are. Right? So what I need to start to do, I need to start doing anyway, is I need to start setting some goals in my life. So I come out of this inventory, I come out of this exercise, and I see some truth about me. The question is, am I willing to live on terms other than my own? And how agnostic am I really? Am I willing to live on terms other than my own? So I had to start forming an ideal. And the best I can come with up at that time was the 4 absolutes of honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. And every day I would wake up and every day I would pray. I would pray for honesty, unselfishness, unselfishness, love, and purity. And then I would get on my bike called life. And when I would leave the house, those were my goals for the day. I want to show up this way in every relationship that I'm in. But like a lot of kids that fall off their bikes, I fall off my bike too of life. And some days I fall off that bike 3 times. Sometimes I fall off that bike 5 times. Sometimes I fall off that bike 100 times in a day. But the real goal here is to get back on the bike and not beat myself up when I fall short. None of us adhere to these principles. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. My sponsor likes to say it all the time. We're all human beings on a spiritual walk, and sometimes we lose focus of the spiritual walk. And my humanness wins out. And my character defects take over. And sometimes I fall under the delusion that my character defects have value. I think anger works for a guy like me sometimes. And the reason why I think that is because I could push you away from me. But I'm also a type of a guy that's very manipulative, and I can know that if I use my anger against you, I can get what I want. I think we all have that trait inside of us in one way or another. I had to become painfully aware of that I do that. And then I was given a consideration, and I think it's probably the most important consideration I ever was asked. Do I look at people, situations, and circumstances in my life through the lens of a character defect? Or do I look at that stuff through the eyes of God? And see, when you're driven by a lot of old ideas, when you're driven by your character defects, when you're driven by all this stuff, I look at everything through a lens of a character defect. The people in my life, my wife, my ex-wife, my family, my kids, my neighbors, my friends, AA members. I look at people at times when I'm disconnected from God and disconnected from you. I look at people with envy, with jealousy, with resentment, with fear or intolerance or judgment. I think we all do that. But what this exercise started to open me up to is to start looking at people in a different fashion, to show forgiveness, to be considerate, to be loving and tolerant. If love and tolerance is our code, I have to ask myself, is it? Am I really practicing love and tolerance when I'm in my home group business meeting or any meeting? And what about the situations in my life, the things we go through? Whether my kids are sick or whether my health is bad or whether I'm having a bad time at a job or whether I have no money in my pocket. Do I look at those things through the lens of a character defect? Do I look at that stuff with all those negative thoughts and negative ideas and negative emotions? Or can I look at that stuff with kind of gratitude and compassion and forgiveness? And the same things with the circumstances in my life. Can I look at that stuff with God's eyes rather than my eyes? So that's what this exercise really started to do for me, was open me up. We say this phrase all the time. It sounds like a nice throwaway line, but I needed to learn how to peel the onion a little bit deeper. I needed to get down to causes and conditions. I needed to walk back into the darkness of my life, because if we have 2 goals in AA, they're very simple. One is the obvious one. Don't pick up the first drink. But I think the second goal we all want to attain is to step into the sunlight of the Spirit. And in order to step into the sunlight of the Spirit, I need to walk through the darkness and see this stuff in black and white, out of my mind, on paper, and get some truth. Now, not every old idea is a bad idea, but I'm being driven by a lot of the old ones that are no good. My life should look like this. My life should look like that. And the minute it doesn't, man, am I pissed off? Am I angry? Am I resentful? Am I envious? Am I just? I'm looking at life through a character defect all the time. But walking into darkness, I had to do something that, man, when you come from the streets, this looks like a real weakness, but I had to be vulnerable. I had to be vulnerable to another man to let him hold my hand and walk me through all this stuff. Now you might be new in here tonight, and this sounds maybe like psychology or some AA psychology, but man, this is the stuff that I had to really take a look at. And when I did, and when I got it out of my mind and got it on paper, man, now I understand what Roland Hazard was going through. That I wanted to be free. I wanted to have a relationship with God. Matter of fact, on page 52, after those bedevilments, what it tells me is this. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. I had to start opening my mind and practice this faith that I could easily throw out at an AA meeting. But the rubber had to hit the road. I had to start really talking and examining the things within me and getting them out so I could walk through that darkness, because it's only when I walk through the darkness that I'm going to find the peace that you guys speak of. It's only through walking through the darkness of my life am I going to find the things that are going to get me free, because that's really the goal here. Not too far from here, man, I remember a talk in 2011. Sandy Beach was here with my sponsor, Bob. And Sandy used to say this all the time, and man, it's so simplistic. What's the point of Alcoholics Anonymous? To have a spiritual experience. That's what he used to say. And what's a spiritual experience? He used to say it in 2 words: let go. Let go. How can I let go when I'm clinging on to this stuff? How can I let go and let God when my pride won't allow me to let go? Sometimes we just need to be beaten into a sense of reasonableness. Yeah, booze brings me to my knees, but living a life on self-will, living a life on these character defects, living a life with all this crap, that'll bring you to your knees too. So I had to learn how to let go. I had to learn that, this stuff is the stuff that's going to kill a guy like me. And you know what? If I don't start looking at this stuff and start creating some kind of vision, of this idea of a true partnership with a power greater than myself, and a true partnership with you is really unattainable. And this idea of freedom, this idea of walking into the sunlight of the spirit, well, that's just a theory. That's just a theory. Those are nice words to throw out at an AA meeting. Because when I'm not in a meeting and I'm home by myself and nothing's going on but in my mind, that's when the rubber hits the road. How free am I? How free am I? It's easy to put the AA game face on, walk into a meeting and say, hey, Ralph, how you doing? Everything's great. Watch the Yankees tonight. They're going to be winning tonight. But the truth of the matter is I can't raise my hand at times and say, man, I'm in pain. I'm 35 years sober. I'm having troubles in alcohol. I'm sober but stuck again. So this whole idea of, getting on the spiritual rocket ship and just going up, up, up and away, that's not for me. That's not my life. But maybe that's what this is really all about. Maybe that's what Alcoholics Anonymous was designed to do, is to allow us to grow a little bit, hit a wall, ask for help, and grow a little bit more. And do that over and over and over again. And through that process, I get to meet a lot of great people. Through that process, what time is it? Through that process, I'm able to see things, because I don't think I could see some of the stuff at 3 years sober that I could see today. I don't think I was willing or even able to look at that kind of stuff. So I bring this stuff up. I talk about this topic today because I think this is really, it was very important for me. It was the key that unlocked the door. It was a true understanding that God is doing for me what I could never do for myself. I've always tried to fix me. But by letting go and letting God to do the work, all I had to do was to be willing. And all I had to do was 2 things. I had to be willing to stop doing certain things, and I had to be willing to start doing some things differently in my life. And some of those things that I had to start doing is getting this stuff out of my head on paper, sharing it with a sponsor, being honest about how I really feel, and just looking at this stuff. And as a result of that, sit here free. 35 years sober, I sit here pretty free. I sit here with no amends owed to anyone right now. I sit here an open book with a sober wife and sober friends. I have a network of men that I can go to at any moment just to say, hey, this is what's going on, and not be afraid of their judgment. Because most times, probably all the time, they say, yeah, I feel that way at times too. And I've done that too. And I think that's the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. I could tell you about a lot of things in AA. I could talk to you about steps, the traditions, the concepts. I could talk to you about the world structure, our structure of Alcoholics Anonymous. But see, what I believe is that we could take all that stuff and put it in a funnel. And when it comes out of the bottom of the funnel, it comes down to this: one drunk talking to another. That's what AA is. One drunk talking to another, sharing experience, strength, and hope. And when we do that, and when we get honest with ourselves, and we start to get down to causes and conditions of the things that are blocking us from God and from each other, and we start to become a little bit open-minded to change, we start to experience this freedom that the book talks about. We start to experience that fourth dimension, the spiritual realm within inside. My insides are not eating my outsides anymore. I'm pretty much at peace. Maybe that's age, maybe that's not. I don't know. But I sit here really comfortable, not feeling well, but very comfortable in my own skin. And for many years, I didn't know how to do that. You know, we hear that term all the time: live life like wear life like a loose garment. And my life is like a loose garment. Not too much stuff really upsets me, but I had to do work. I had to take actions. I had to examine this stuff at a level that I never even knew existed. And because of good men in my life and good women in my life, I was able to get down to the darkness of my life. And as a result of that, I sit free here today. The obsession has been lifted. And because of that, I don't take a drink. And because of that, I carry out our primary purpose. We have three purposes in Alcoholics Anonymous: primary purpose, singleness of purpose, and finally, real purpose, to fit myself of maximum service and to God and to other men. And as a result of that, I'm doing pretty good. So I know I'm a little short on time, but I'd rather hear from you guys than me just babbling on. So congratulations again to all celebrants, and thank you again for having me today. And that's all I got. Thanks.